So welcome everyone who is just entered here for our Lunch and Learn. This event, I'm so lucky to have organized it as part of the Heritage Week celebrations. And so we're focused on today this question of how are we meeting the needs of the times by thinking about the history of our students from the past, the present, to looking into the future. So I am happy to welcome our facilitators today, Dr. Jonathan Fitzgerald, Assistant Professor of Humanities, Hillary Trischitta, Assistant Director of Enrollment and Advising, and Dr. David Rudder, the Dean of Professional Studies, and they are going to facilitate the discussion today. So I am going to turn it over right now to Dr. Fitzgerald, to Fitz, to get us started. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Christine. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. This is bringing up traumatic memories from COVID Zoom classes, but I think we got this. So as is always the way, I hope you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Okay, and as I go, however, over to my notes to then actually give the talk, I won't be able to see any of you. So I will trust that you are still there, and when I'm done, I'll come and make sure. Okay, so I'll get started if I can find, there we are. Yeah, so thank you, Christine, for the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you to everybody who came during your lunchtime. And my job here today is to provide a bit of insight into the Regis student of the past through the lens of the Regis Herald, which is our long-running, but also long hiatus, that's a verb, student newspaper. And so I'll give a little bit of history and context about that, and then I'll say what I can say from my research so far about the Regis student of this time. So for the past 2 years, with my students in ID 234, which is a class called Digital Scholarship, I've been working with the Regis Herald in the college archives located here in the Fine Arts Center in an effort to inventory and scan and finally to present this analog archive through digital means. We still have a long way to go. There's still a lot more scanning to do, but I'm happy for the opportunity to show up the work that we've done so far, and also happy to say that I'm on a CANEB grant that is going through May, I believe, and the scanning work will continue. So that's good. I would be remiss if I didn't say how indebted that I am, and I think by extension our whole community is really to the work of the students who stepped up to the challenge of creating this digital archive. First, before we had equipment, just by taking pictures with their phones, if I'm honest, and then in the last year with scanners as well. I'm also really grateful to Dr. Kate Edney, who has been overseeing the archives in lieu of a full-time archivist right now at Regis, and she has been literally opening the door. She holds the keys to the archive and letting us in there. So I'm very grateful to her. And then finally, I have to say a huge thank you to my student, Lila Torrentali, class of 24, who's been working with me on all things, including the Regis Herald project. And most crucially for us today, she put together these beautiful slides. So I cannot take any credit for how artsy and cool these slides are. This is totally 100% Lila's work, and I'm grateful to her. So in this presentation, I'll provide an overview of the Regis Herald and the role that it's played at Regis in the past. I'll go into a bit of detail about its history, and then I'll turn specifically to a kind of composite view of the Regis student of the past. And finally, I'll glance ever so briefly toward the future because as of 2 nights ago, the Regis Herald has been relaunched after a 30-year hiatus, which is very exciting. So what was the Regis Herald and what role did it play historically at Regis College? So from its launch, the Herald was an independent student newspaper created by and for students with the help of a faculty advisor or two. From 1934 to 1993, which is 59 years, it appeared exclusively in print, which makes sense because there was no internet during the entire span of its first life. And its focus really was on giving a voice to Regis students. And as you'll see in a moment, they use that voice for a number of things, including to inform, to entertain, to educate, to inspire, and to engage, all the things that good journalism is meant to do. And it's worth noting, as a person who wrote a book on women literary journalists, that due to the fact that for the entire 60 years or 59 years that this was running, Regis was an all-women's college. This is an archive dedicated to and comprised of women's journalism, which is amazing. It's pretty unique and important stuff that I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity to study. So the Herald, as I said, ran for 59 years, again, from 1934 to 1993, but it wasn't always called the Regis Herald, went through some name changes. From 1934 to 1971, it was the Regis Herald, and you can see some examples of the flag or banner that appeared at the top of each issue during this time. Then in the 1970s, as with much else about culture in the United States, things started to change. From 1971 to 1972, the paper's title was shortened to The Herald, or succinct, maybe more modern, I don't know. From 1972 to 1976, neither Regis nor Herald appeared in the title, and it became known as Educatin, which is Latin for to educate. In 1976, Educatin was abandoned in favor of Our Times, which nicely mirrors the name of another long-running Regis publication, the Hemetera, whose title is Greek for Our Own. So you had Our Own and Our Times for a bit there. But in 1981, until it ceased publication in 1993, it went back to its original title of the Regis Herald and sported the super retro 80s style banner that I just love, and we'll see in a little bit more detail again in a second. All right, so now I'd like to show you some of the more interesting front pages that we've uncovered through our work scanning and archiving the Herald. And in doing so, you'll get a sense of some of the concerns that animated life on campus through the decades, and you'll get a first glimpse of some of the students themselves. Okay, so not only does this issue from December 1936 feature some Christmas-inspired banner art, you can see there at the top, but also you can read about how Regis students joined forces with students from Emmanuel College, Boston College, and Holy Cross, among others, to form a sodality, or a religious association. And you can read a review of the drama club's recent performance there, and you can see a list of students who made the dean's list, which is pretty cool. Here in the 40s, the editors got a bit experimental with the front page. They moved the banner down into the middle of the page, confusing me and my students as we were scanning. But there it's surrounded by stories about campus capers and the Glee Club and a beauty contest that was called the Queen of May that was held on campus in the 40s. In this special edition of the Regis Herald from the 1960s, you can read about a 3-day forum wherein students considered what student government should mean at Regis and how it should be enacted. Continuing concern, of course. And then, as I said, in the 1970s, it was a time of change, and these two front pages really dramatize that. In the one on the left, the editors chose to print a mostly blank page with only, it's really small, I know, but it has the dictionary definition of the word communicate. And inside, readers would find that the editors in their editorial were none too happy with the lack of communication around important issues on campus. Likewise, in this front page from the Herald, when it was just the Herald, it asks in concert with the student government if anybody cared about events happening on campus and in the world. And this is really a consistent theme of the 70s. It was the need for students to get involved with social justice causes, which is really cool. And then again, this front page from 1982 sports this new banner that I love and would like to make t-shirts of. I think it's so cool. As well as an article here about Sexual Awareness Week, wherein Campus Ministry and Student Affairs co-sponsored a program on the differing aspects of human sexuality, according to the article. And you can see here that times had changed at Regis. And we're continuing to change through the 80s and into the early 90s when the paper ceased publication. So now I'd like to turn to the Regis student of the past a bit more specifically, being that that's the sort of charge that I have here today. And to do this, in looking through the archive, I came up with a few kind of top level categories to guide us. So the first thing to note is that for the entire period, as I said, covered by the first iteration of the student newspaper, Regis was a women's college. So that's the first thing that we need to say and sort of establish, right, in terms of the Regis student of the past. But that established, we'll also look at how these women express themselves in terms of their social life, spirituality, and increasingly as the decades go on in terms of politics. As I said, and as you probably already knew, until 2007, Regis was a women's college. And I've selected a few front pages here that underscore that point. And this is evident not only in the fact that, as you'd expect, most photos in the paper when not depicting faculty members or guest speakers are young women. And as an aside, I love this. Some of my students imagined a really cool project that they could do changing fashions through the lens of these photos, which I think would be excellent. And hopefully we can make that happen once this is all digitized. I hope that will come to fruition. Anyways, the students are always amazed. And as you can see, if you look closely at the page on the far left, the prominence of home economics as both a major and as a club here on campus that always gets them. So that's pretty cool. I'll leave that there for you to check out for a sec. And then we'll move on to the spiritual life of students on campus. So Regis students had a robust spiritual life. In the Herald, this could include anything from news stories about masses that were held on campus to opinion pieces about spiritual life at Regis too, especially later in the paper's history, social justice action taken by students. You can see some of that there. Campus Ministry asks, who is a Catholic? Love that. Okay, perhaps one of the strongest signals that one gets through the reading the Herald is the importance of the social life of Regis students, right? Not surprisingly, especially early on, there was no shortage of gossipy pieces in the Herald. And here on the far left, you can see a pictorial profile on the winners of Regis's most contest. And you have things like most friendly, most Bostonian, and of course, most popular. Traditions were strong throughout the entire period of the Regis Herald, and you can see this annual father-daughter dance is featured here, as well as the Christmas issue of the paper, which was sort of a big deal every year. For my part, I'm fascinated by the political life of the historical Regis student, especially as time goes on and culminating in the 1970s. Regis students had a lot to say about the issues of the day. There were articles anticipating World War II, lectures on campus considering the role of the Catholic college girl in peace. Again, in the 1970s, there's a lot more about politics and social justice in particular. And it was during this time also, perhaps as an indication of how the student body was diversifying, though I would need to do more research to sort of confirm and get some numbers on this. But during this time, Black students on campus introduced a new column called Black Is, which was used mostly to educate the majority white student body on Black culture. And it's an amazing column. There's usually poetry included, and it's just such a wonderful resource here. You can see right in the middle of the page. All right, so as I mentioned earlier this week, and very exciting, the Regis Herald was relaunched as an online publication after a 30-year hiatus from 1993 to 2023. And it promises to be once again a place where the current and future Regis student can express their social, spiritual, and political life. And here is a new front page. I've showed you all these old front pages. Here's a contemporary one. This is the Regis Herald as it is today. You can find that at regisherald.com. And just to note that at the same time as this new version of the Regis Herald has been launched, my students and I will keep working on digitizing the paper archive, and we will make that available online as well to provide a historical grounding to the current publication. So look for that in years to come. And that is my presentation. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to the question and answer period. And I will figure out how to stop sharing, and you will all reappear. There you are. Good.
Thank you, Fitz. We're gonna pass it over now to Hillary, who's gonna talk about today.
Hi, everyone. Give me 1 second. Sharing my screen's always fun. Hold on. Slideshow. Nope. Oh, I did it from the beginning. Hold on. Sorry. From current slide. There we go. Oh my goodness. It's loading. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Christine mentioned, my name is Hillary Trischitta. I'm the Assistant Director of Enrollment and Advising under the Grad Affairs Division. I've had the pleasure of working here for 5 years, and I'm also now a student here as well. Today, I will be discussing Regis today, looking at the present day student populations we have here at Regis. I'm going to identify some of the characteristics of these student populations and the ways we as faculty and staff can support these students. So who do we serve here at Regis? I think it's important to note that the Regis student today is more than just an undergrad and grad student population. We are a dynamic group of students. We have a dynamic group of students here who are diverse. And some of the populations that I'm going to talk about today are undergraduate, transfer, first gen, veterans and military connected students, as well as graduate and professional studies or adult learners. So let's get started. I want to take a look at what makes these student populations special. I want to preface this slide by saying I do apologize. I know that these numbers do not add up to 100. I did some research on prior to compiling my presentation, and I'm told that these numbers come from the last time we did a self-identifying survey to our undergraduate student populations. So in 2023, Regis College currently has 809 traditional undergraduate students. And of those undergraduate students, 137 of them are transfer students. Our students, 50% of our students identify as first generation, 33% of them identify as white, 22% identify as Black or Latinx, and 7% identify as Asian. Across the nation right now, there's a 13% enrollment decline in undergrad enrollment there's a decline in students enrolling in college right after high school. So what that is an indicator of is that our student populations are growing in terms of diversity. So we are going to be seeing student populations that are more encompassing of a non-traditional student population. So as some of you may know, our undergraduate student population here at Regis, they are part of our Generation Z or Gen Zers, who are people who are born between 1996 and 2012. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about the characteristics of this population to get a sense of who are our undergraduate students and how do we interpret their behavior and how do we connect with them? Gen Zers are self-starters. They are driven for success. They're headstrong in their beliefs in what they want out of life. They grew up with technology, which means that Gen Zers gained global cultural perspective from an early age. Which in turn is shown through their dedication to activism and strong interest in diversity and inclusivity for all. They are known to have pragmatic attitudes towards their beliefs, and above all, this generation is often misunderstood and they're sometimes characterized as lazy, which this actually could not be further from the truth. Gen Zers have persevered through a global pandemic, and they missed out on major life milestones because of that, and through all of that, they've grown up to be innovative, goal-oriented, and passionate about what they believe in. So support for these students would look like utilizing technology to connect with them, showing interest through co-curricular engagement and community events that pique their interest, such as climate change, human rights, LGBTQ and diversity and inclusion programming. Next up, I wanted to touch base and talk about our veteran and military connected students. I have to shout out Nick. I think he's on here today. Nick gave me this slide and these statistics. So for those who may not know, I put the poppy flower on here today. The poppy flower is used to symbolize sacrifice for our service men and women across the nation. And you may see that around like Veterans Day and whatnot. So in total, we have right under 3,600 veteran and service members enrolled at Regis College. And there's some additional statistics on this page as well. 63% of our students who are veterans are parents, 63% as well. Of our student veterans identify as first generation, and 64% of our student veterans have a VA-rated disability. So I think that shows a little bit of a snapshot of who this population is. And next, I want to talk about the ways in which we can support the veteran and military connected student population. Veteran and military connected student population is a dynamic population. This includes veterans, active duty service members, and students who are military connected. So what that means is students who either have a partner or a spouse who is or was in the military, or they have a parent who served. These students are highly disciplined, they're well-rounded, and they have a lot of life experience due in part to their military experience. Often these students are adult learners. And the ways that we can provide support to this population is through providing a robust sense of community. That's really important to them. This also includes awareness across the institution of the services and supports that we offer our veteran community. Also offering specialized programming such as orientations, prior life credit, specifically for military service, as well as a military tuition rate. And again, just another shout out to Nick and his department, because he does an excellent job at making sure that our veteran and military connected students have proper resources and supports, and that we as a community know about them. And next up, we have the graduate and professional studies students. Our graduate, doctoral, and professional studies students fall into the bucket of adult learners. So in total, we have almost 3,500 adult learners, graduate, doctoral, professional studies students enrolled at Regis College. And I wanted to highlight here that our population is pretty robust in terms of our online community. We have online our largest number, so 2,674 students. Likely most of these students are close to or in the New England area, but we do have students across the United States. And then also I wanted to point out that we do have a bachelor's degree completion population as well. These students are predominantly adult learners, non-traditional, and we have 273 students, and that number is going to continue to grow and expand, particularly with the launch of our new professional studies division. And I wanted to talk just briefly about how can we support these students? What are some of the characteristics that these students have? All of the students, all of the populations that I just mentioned essentially fall under the adult learner characteristics. So these students are over the age of 25. They're juggling multiple roles, which can include being a parent, an employee, a caretaker, and a student, and much more. So what we know about adult learners is that they are multitaskers. They have internal and external motivators for why they're getting their education. And from an andragogic lens, their need for knowledge application is direct. So adult learners want to know why it is they are learning what they are learning and be able to apply it to their jobs and lives. And some of these supports that we can provide for adult learners, again, I'm going back to prior life credit. Prior life credit, whether that's through a CLEP or an assessment, military course credit, or a portfolio evaluation. In some of my research, I've come across alternative financial assistance. So in addition to financial aid, micro scholarships, application or deposit fee waivers, child care vouchers, reduced tuition rates, as well as offering bridge programs or specialized orientations specific to this population, bridge programs that address re-entry to college after a long hiatus, which is pretty relevant to this adult learner population. I see that a lot in terms of enrollment. And then lastly, tailored support to for the adult learner. So through student affairs, that could be, night and weekend availability or after hours office support and things like that. So I know my slides were not as fun as Fitz's, but I wanted to end and kind of tie this all into the Sisters of St. Joseph and Heritage Week. So I wanted to share with you this quote from the Sisters of St. Joseph that says, "Together we contribute to a world desperately in need of unity." And I just think that really speaks to what Regis College believes in and what our mission is. And I will leave you all with that, and I'm going to pass it along to Dean David Rudder.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me share my screen and we'll get the party started. Can you see my screen? If I can. So somebody needs to tell me because I'm on full screen. Can you guys see my
Yes, I
screen?
can see your
Oh,
screen.
thank you.
Yes,
we
can,
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, all right, here we go. Party started. Okay. So so David Rudder, so one of the things in DPS, I should tell you about the naming. Let me go back to this a second. We had the wonderful naming of our division a couple of weeks ago, named after a wonderful graduate of the institution, and just a remarkable woman, and so quite an entrepreneur in her right. I cannot tell you the year she graduated, this off the top of my head, but named after her. And she was an incredible person, entered in a lot of areas where women were not in the professional world. Just a dynamic individual. And there was a naming up to 2 weeks ago that was just absolutely wonderful, and her family came in for that. So just want to acknowledge how we got the name Wood Levine, that's Division of Professional Studies. So where does this come from? What's our story here that we focus on? One of the things Hillary mentioned earlier, and this is the latest statistics around the Boston area, many high school students are not going into college directly. And if you look at the statistics in front of you, I think it's about a little bit more than half of them, the college students have decided that they want to enroll in college after graduating high school. And this has been an ongoing trend. So more and more we realize the fact that higher education has to shift and it has to pivot if it's going to create opportunities for new learners within the space. And what does that look like? And that's directly linked to what we think are the opportunities the Division of Professional Studies will give. As you know, there are many, and this has been going on for some time, but got expedited through the pandemic. Many employers are looking for alternative skill sets, alternative credentialing beyond just getting degrees by which individuals can come in and can be trained. If you think about Google, you think about any of the major tech firms, they don't even require students to have college degrees. They're doing a lot of that on the job training and stuff. And what has happened is that level of understanding of having specific needs and employers are looking for have expanded the need for what we call micro-credentialing. And micro-credentialing is basically a certification or badging process where we have constricted curriculum that is very targeted, very industry specific about certain skill sets and competencies that employers are looking for. And that's the new wave, and it's been going on for some time, but more so now, more institutions in higher education are looking to play a role in that space and be much more deliberate. And that's what we're doing here at Regis College as well. We'll do a deeper dive. And to speak about the coronavirus is really where we realized a lot of people, and this is a national trend, and a lot of people lost employment, never went back to work. The great resignation has taken place, that people needed different skill sets and they needed it quickly and they needed it at a lower cost. And they needed really relevant to what the job opportunities were around them. And very much so, that is the world of micro-credentialing. Very compact, very quickly, low cost, and really targeted at certain industries based on the needs. So that's really, and the pandemic just really expedited this reality for us nationally, and it absolutely came right on time for the work and opened up the Division of Professional Studies at Regis. So that gives you a context of telling the story of how we got to this wonderful place where we are and trying to do a new type of educational opportunity. So I talk about how does DPS operate? And there's really three umbrellas of how we see it. We have a partnership with CORE, which is our educational partner. They have a set of curated healthcare and IT certificates that we currently have underway in the market. We have 10 healthcare certificates that are out there, and I'm going to give you a list of those, and 3 IT certificates. And we're in the process of reviewing, I think, 13 more IT certificates over the next 2 weeks that hopefully will go to market. So that's one branch of DPS. The second branch is the expansion of our degree programs focused on adult learners. There's going to be a set of degree programs of which we are primarily just focused on adult learners coming to Regis who've had some workforce experience, may have some PLA, may have been at another institution for some time, and life just got interrupted and took them off the path, and now they need to get back. And that's one of the things we're going to focus on in select number of degree programs. And in that, eventually, we are going to move forward at some point of taking our certificate programs that we will be offering and figure out how we can give that for credit. So students who are in our certificates programs will eventually be able to take those opportunities and get some college credit for it. And then the third piece we also talk about in the umbrella of DPS is our homegrown certificate programs from Regis faculty. We have a couple that are in the works right now, exploring opportunities that we can, where our faculty who have our content experts see a real gap in the marketplace where we can deliver some real focus and curated content that we can build in-house. So that's one of the areas that we're working on as well. So those are the 3 pillars that really explain to you how DPS operates. One of the key things we just wanted to spend a moment was to talk about reviewing the needs of the adult learner. And one of the things we always talk about is how is the classroom needs to be redeveloped? How does it need to become a desirable place to understand the workforce, but also the needs of how the adult brain operates, what their focus and what their priorities are. Much of this work we think about from an instructional design lens of how we really construct our classes, how we construct our assignments, how we engage in the type of assignments we want to have in our classes. So when we talk about, we may have a degree program that's primarily geared on our traditional age student, we then need to think about how do we do an uplift that it's relevant and it's mindful of how an adult learner learns, and how do we need to be think about developing the class structure and some of the content that might be a little bit different just to engage adult learners in a different way. So we talk about the desired relevance, and then the adult learner really taking some sense of ownership of their learning and helping them to feel empowered in that process. So I just wanted to focus on the instruction design because we talk a lot about that at DPS. How do we focus on them as an adult learner, as our customer base, and being sensitive to their needs and priorities? Then I just want to give you a spectrum on the left-hand side. These are all of the current certificate programs that we're currently offering through our partnership with CORE, and they run down the list: sterile processing technician, software developer, physical therapy aide, phlebotomy, which is probably the most popular one that people come to, pharmacy technician, patient care, medical assistant, healthcare IT technician, and it runs down the gamut. What you see in these numbers are simply the number of interests or leads that we have on a given week that people are inquiring through our social media outreach and through our marketing campaign, how many interests we're getting in these particular types of certifications. So these are the 13 that we currently have to market, just to give you some perspective and concept of what we're currently doing, which is quite exciting. And then finally, as we do this work and trying to get more people to consider our certificate program, is really the work about B2B, our business to business focus, and how we plan to land large healthcare organizations and hospitals who need this level of work. We talk about the Massachusetts EP2TL program, which is really, it's the Workforce Development Board. You have to become a provider. In order to become a provider, you have to fill out a bunch of applications and send your materials into what type of workforce opportunities you can give. So we get to be on that list. And if we get to be on that list, there are state funds that are given to organizations and businesses who want to provide some level of training to their staff and to their employees. So that's one of the ways we're building our business to business relationship. We have the President's Workforce Development Council coming on campus. President Hayes is hosting I think we probably sent out invitations to about 60 organizations and healthcare leaders, and we're hosting something on April 12th. So we look forward to seeing that. So you might see a lot of new faces walking around campus. And then we talked about the direct engagement campaign. We already have a lot of wonderful partnerships due to a number of our degree programs here at Regis that we want to re-engage those partners in a way to talk about our new certification process, new options that are available to them as well, to really say, hey, how can we deepen our relationships with our current members where we may have practicum placement for our nursing students, for our dental hygienist students, for our psychology students, and whatever along those lines. We need to deepen those relationships, let them know the growing opportunities that Regis has for new students who can come and really be thoughtful and engage in our partners to know about all the options that are available to them. So I believe that stops my presentation, and being mindful of time, we wanted to open it up for discussions. And so hopefully I've given you guys some time. And one of the questions I thought we would throw out there, the team had got me to ask this question, and Fitz has done a good job to talk about where we started as an institution, the type of students that we have. Hillary gives us an idea about what the type of students we currently have at Regis. How are they different? How do they change from their generational aspects? And I'm talking about the future of the institution, how the different type of student we're going to bring into the institution who might not be just degree seeking, but might need certification, a more focused type of learning opportunity. So we wanted to raise this question to the group. As we look at the evolution of the student out there, or the Regis student, how do we think we're doing? What have we done well as time has changed? What are areas for us to think about we can still improve upon? That was one of the questions we wanted to toss out there to the group based on what we have presented.